So good afternoon, members, guests, and this distinguished speaker, Jenny Branson. I want to welcome everyone to our meeting today. We are privileged today to have Jenny Branson, JD, MBA, Assistant and Dean of the Admissions of Financial Aid Director from Baylor Law School as our distinguished speaker today, and we look forward to having a great discussion. Our speaker today truly needs no introduction. Jenny Branson joined the Baylor Law family in 2012. She loves sharing all that is great about Baylor Law, hearing applicant stories, and helping their law school dreams become a reality. She received her AB from Harvard University in 2007, her MBA and her JD cum laude from Southern Methodist University in 2011. While in law school, she was active in the Christian Legal Society and the Federalist Society. She was a student worker at the MSU Law Admissions Office and was a year-in review editor for the International Lawyer. She worked for several small bankruptcies, constructions, and real estate firms, and served as a judicial intern for the Honorable Harlan D. Hale in the U.S. Bankruptcy Court for the Northern District of Texas. In 2011, she moved to Illinois, where she worked as an assistant director of the admissions and financial aid at the Northern Illinois University College of Law. Ms. Branson, I want to tell you how happy we are that you accepted our invitation today. Thank you. Without further ado, let's begin our discussion. It will be moderated by several questions submitted by the board and members ahead of time. At the end, we will have a small Q&A with the audience.
Okay, great.
So we'll begin with our first question, and that is, what kind of extracurricular and work experiences does Baylor Law School admissions seek in a candidate?
Okay, absolutely. So I think the good news is that it depends. And really, we look for anything that you're passionate about. We have every different background you can imagine in our students. And so when we're looking at resumes and extracurricular and work experience, is we're looking for your resume to tell us a story. So what were you interested in college? If you're interested in, I don't know, the environment, just for example, are you involved in environmental groups? Have you grown your leadership skills through those groups? Have you stayed committed to particular groups throughout college? That's just one example. Are you working part-time or full-time to pay your way through college? If so, we want to see that. We want to see that tells us that you're a hard worker, that you can balance a lot of things. If you are going into the law because you're really passionate about serving a community, have you been involved with a bunch of different service organizations? We want to see that on your resume. I think a trap that people get into sometimes is they think, oh, I must do these extracurriculars, I must have these jobs or internships to be a successful law student. And we can very much tell that you're just checking off boxes if you do that. Now, if you're really, really interested about certain areas of the law and want to do a bunch of legal internships, that's great. We certainly see that on a lot of applications, but we also see people with a lot of different other interests and work experience and involvement. I think what we do want to see is involvement in something. We don't want to see just going to school and nothing else. Grades are important, but they need to be supplemented by either work or extracurricular involvement.
Okay, thank you for your response. So our second question is, how are college GPA and Lsat scores weighted on an application?
Great question. So I have kind of a cheesy metaphor when talking about the law school application. I say that the law school application is like an ice cream sundae. Your Lsat score and your GPA are your 2 scoops of ice cream. They're the foundation of your application. It's because they show the admissions committee whether or not you're going to be able to do the work in law school. And our admissions committee doesn't want to let in somebody into our school if you're not going to be successful. We don't really ever lose anybody for academic reasons. So we don't do that because we make sure on the front end that you're going to be able to do the work. Now, one of those, LSAT or GPA, can be a little stronger than the other. The GPA in particular, we don't just look at the flat GPA. We look at what classes you took, if there are trends, if there were other things going on when maybe you made a bad GPA one quarter. We make sure that you're taking kind of more and more difficult classes each year. We look at what classes you're taking. If you're a biology major or an engineering major, sometimes those GPAs are lower than an English major, communications major. Not always, but sometimes. So that GPA is a little more complicated. If you've been out of school for a while, by the time you apply to law school, that GPA has less weight, for example. LSAT score is also not just a flat LSAT score, right? We look at all of your LSAT scores. We report the highest, but we do look at all of the scores. They have increased the number of times that you can take the LSAT now. You can take it 3 times in a year, 5 times within 5 years, and 7 times total. And so we're looking to see if you just studied once or if you took it a bunch of times. We're looking to see if there are huge LSAT score jumps or a decrease. So we're looking at a lot of things beyond just the LSAT and GPA, but still LSAT and GPA are those foundational pieces. Other things like your resume, your work experience, your letters of recommendation, really all of the supplemental stuff are the toppings. They give us a better sense of who you are, what you care about, what sort of student you're going to be, what sort of community member you're going to be. And then really the cherry on top of the application is the personal statement, which is kind of like your college essay for law school. That can really make or break an application. Obviously, if you have nothing else going on for you, a cherry doesn't make a sundae, but if everything else is kind of so-so, a personal statement can really push an application one way or the other.
Okay, thank you. So our third question is, are there certain law-related activities that make candidates stand out from the rest of the applicants?
Yeah, so no is the short answer. I think doing a bunch of kind of law-related activities can be okay, because we see, okay, this person is interested in law school, but there are plenty of successful applicants who do not have those law-related activities. Now, it can be really, really helpful for you to kind of determine if law school is really what you want to do and maybe what type of law you're interested in, and it can help you develop some skills, learning how to balance things, learning how to read, learning how to research, things like that. And if you highlight those skills in your legal externships or internships, that can be helpful. But just having a particular law-related activity or internship is not helpful on its face. Now, being involved in a pre-law society in college, for example, that's going to get you some good exposure to all sorts of different types of law. It's going to help you think about what questions to ask of law school admissions people. It's going to help with your communication skills, things like that. So a pre-law society or a Phi Alpha Delta, which is a legal fraternity in college, those can be helpful, but don't just join them because you think they're going to look good to us. As I said before, we don't necessarily care what you were involved with. It's more about the skills that you gain that you're going to be able to communicate with us on your application.
Okay, thank you. So our next question is, as members of the community, we know it is a very important part that it is very important to be a part of the community's needs. So are there any leadership positions that make a candidate stand out from the pool of candidates?
So I don't know if there's a particular leadership position. What is important is that you have, to the extent that you can, some leadership position. Leadership, as you've pointed out, is a really important trait that we want to see in a law school application. So whether or not that is you've worked at the same job throughout college and are now, a manager at your job, or you're involved in the pre-law society and are president of pre-law society, or are a resident assistant in your dorm, or are, the president of some other society, or, just an officer in some society, or you're a summer camp counselor. I mean, there are a lot of different ways that you can show leadership. But the trait of leadership by itself is really important. So that's great that you've picked up on that.
Yes, thank you. So our next question is, we know the importance of preparing well for the LSAT. That said, are there any cutoff scores that Baylor Admissions Committee has or does not allow an application to be fully reviewed?
Nope, every single application is fully reviewed. I will tell you right now in our building, so current law students, LSAT scores of current law students range from either 147 or 148 up to a 174. And current undergrad GPAs range from a 212 up to a 422. So we have a pretty broad range of students. We really do look at each application carefully. So, I mean, I don't want to say that there's a cutoff score on the LSAT, because they're not. And when y'all are applying in, 4 or 5 years, scores might be different. But, when you're looking at us and when you're looking at any school, I do really recommend that you look at the 25th percentile numbers. And if your LSAT score and your GPA are both below the 25th percentiles, I would be cautious, just because you don't want to get yourself, even if you were to be admitted to a school like that, it might be really difficult for you. And you don't want to go to a school where you're struggling the whole time and then you're not able to get a good job, and it just has all sorts of ripple effects.
Okay, thank you. So our next question is, could you share with us a specific number of applicants that were accepted this year or the past year?
Sure. So we have about 3,000 applications a year, maybe 3,500 total actually. We accept 900 to 1,000 applicants, and then we matriculate, so that's people that actually come, about 150, 160 a year. Now Baylor's a little bit special. We have 3 different entering classes a year. So we have students entering in the spring, so in February, in the summer in May, and then in the fall in August. So we have about 25 to 40 enter in the spring. We have about the same number enter in the summer, and then we have 85 to 95 enter in the fall. So when you're looking at law schools and see, the number of applications versus the number of people actually entering, don't get too overwhelmed by those numbers, because we admit a lot of people who end up not coming, and that's true with any school. And also, I think admissions rates, you've got to take with a grain of salt, because in that 3,500 applicant number, we have a lot of people with a 1.0 GPA and a 121 LSAT or stuff like that, and people that have put no time into the application. And yes, we count them in our application numbers, but they're not really competitive applications. So I would worry less about, okay, this school has this many applications and accepts this many people, and focus more on, okay, what can I do to get good grades, do well on the LSAT, and have all of these other pieces to your application.
Okay, great, thank you. So our next question is, what would you recommend us to prepare for the LSAT? Is law school enough, or should we seek a program to further help us?
Could you ask the second part of the question again? I heard what would you recommend to prepare for the LSAT? What was the second part of that question?
Okay, so the second part of the question was there is Kaplan program. So
Yeah.
do you think there's other more programs we can use, or?
Sure, that's a great question. So the truly lawyer answer to this question of how to prepare for the LSAT is it depends. So how I recommend people start is first go to lsac.org. I'm sure if you guys have done any exploration of law school, you're familiar with that site. It's the Law School Admission Council. They're kind of like the College Board for law school. They put on the LSAT, and that's where you'll apply to law schools. But they also have a lot of tools. They have tools on the kind of exploring the field of law side. They have tools on the exploring law school side. And then they have tools for exploring the LSAT. So they will explain about the different LSAT questions. They also publish a number of LSAT tests. These are true LSAT tests. So I think that's a good place to start, just to get familiar with the test. After that, this is kind of old school, but I say go to a bookstore, maybe your college's bookstore, and there's gonna be a test prep section. There're gonna be a bunch of different test prep companies. Look through those test prep books and see if there's an explanation style that resonates with you. And once you kind of get that squared away, then I'd say start taking a bunch of practice tests. That is the most important part of preparing for the LSAT, is taking lots and lots and lots of practice tests. I'd say take them under timed conditions, take them in a place where there's outside noise, because inevitably you'll get to test day and there'll be some sort of distraction. And if you've only ever taken practice LSAT tests in the quiet of your bedroom, that might be a challenge. After you've taken some practice tests and have a good familiarity with the material, then I think you really need to know yourself and think about what works best for you. LSAT test prep companies can be really expensive, several $1,000s. Now, some of them have scholarships, but still, when you're in college, spending a couple $1,000s is expensive. So you really need to think, okay, what am I going to gain from this class? And sometimes, if you are the sort of person that really needs the structure of going to a class, either virtually or in person, and needs somebody to explain answers to you, then it might be worth it. Because if you increase your LSAT score by, 15 or 20 points by going to that class, that could increase your scholarship offer by, $20, $30, $40,000. So that might be worth it. But on the flip side, if you were a really diligent person and those books that you got from the bookstore, those explanations work for you, or I also recommend looking at Khan Academy, KHAN Academy. They partner with lsac.org to do a free test prep, free LSAT test prep. If that works for you and you're able to understand their explanations and still take lots of practice tests, then, I don't think the thousands of dollars for a test prep class are necessarily worth it. So you really have to know yourself and know your style.
Although we haven't prepared for the LSAT, we want to thank you for those resources.
Of course.
So our next question is, does it matter how many LSAT exams applicants take?
So I'd say if you take one or two, or if you take a couple, or really even three, we don't care a whole lot. Now, if there is a huge discrepancy in your scores, if you have two scores that are similar and then you jump 15 or 20 points, then I think you need to explain that to the committee, because what you want to not have us do is make up a story ourselves. When we see your law school application, you don't want us to have questions, because then we will just fill in an explanation that we come up with. So if there's a big discrepancy, explain that. Other than that, two or maybe even three tests, not going to be a big deal. When we start seeing more than three, then I think admissions committees start to question your judgment, your prudence, because it costs money to take the LSAT. And we're wondering, okay, why isn't this person taking the LSAT at a time when she or he can really study for it and put your best foot forward? Why is this person just throwing money at it? And then we start to question your prudence. But I always say kind of aim for taking it once, plan on taking it twice. And if you need to take it a third time, that's okay.
Okay, thank you. So our next question is, does Baylor Law School offer scholarships? If so, how many scholarships are given per year?
Absolutely. So yes, we have a really robust scholarship program. Above 90% of our students receive scholarship. Of our incoming students receive scholarships. Those range in amount to a very small scholarship up to full tuition scholarship. Last year, about 40% of our students received full tuition scholarships. Now, scholarships, and this is true at a lot of schools, are typically based more purely on numbers and are not kind of as holistic an approach as admissions are. So the way it works at Baylor Law is your LSAT and your GPA will get you in kind of a general range for scholarships. And then some of those other pieces like work experience, overcoming difficulty, writing ability, things like that can raise your scholarship. So I'd say kind of if you're shooting for that, top full tuition scholarship, say to be really safe when you get ready to apply, look at kind of our 75th percentiles on LSAT and GPA, and that's going to most likely put you in solid contention for a full tuition scholarship. But our average scholarship is about a half tuition scholarship.
That's good to know. Thank you. So our next question that I have is, Okay, so I have no more further questions, but I know
That's
somebody here would like to ask us questions. If you have, you can unmute your mic or put it in chat.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so is there any Lsat score that immediately catches your attention?
I mean, yeah, 180 is going to catch my attention. No, but even, I mean, not really. I mean, we have people that apply with very, very high scores that still don't get in because, as I kind of mentioned before, LSAT and GPA are kind of the baseline. They tell us, okay, this person can do the work. And really for us, if you look at as long as you're meeting our medians and higher on both, then we know you can do the work. At that point, we turn to everything else. So scores are just kind of we glance at them first to make sure that we know you can do the work, and then we look at everything else. So there's no kind of one score that makes us go, yes, we absolutely want this person, because then we got to go dig into everything else. It's a good question, though. I guess if y'all are thinking of questions, one thing I do want to mention to y'all is this is excellent that you're thinking about this so early. And I encourage y'all as you go into college, first of all, when you're in college, meet with your pre-law advisor. Every campus has a pre-law advisor, and that person is going to have answers to a lot of the questions y'all have asked. And that person's going to be able to point you to a lot of different schools and kind of help you figure out your path. And then also now or in college, don't be afraid and don't hesitate to continue communicating with law school admissions offices. We are here to help you. We want the best lawyers for the profession. That's our whole thing. We want to find the students that fit best with our program so that we can prepare the best attorneys, best future attorneys. So we are always happy to answer questions about our program, but also just more generally to guide you and help you think through things, even if you don't end up in our program. So I think this is great that y'all are already starting this, and I really encourage you to continue to talk to law school admissions offices. And then also my other little tip is talk to attorneys, talk to lots of different types of attorneys. That is probably the biggest tip that I give to high school and early college students is, attorneys love to talk about themselves. And attorneys do a lot of different types of things. So if you're thinking you might want to be a lawyer one day, talk to talk to a family law attorney, talk to a prosecutor, talk to a corporate lawyer. You can just email these people and say, I'd love to hear what your day-to-day life looks like. Or once COVID's over, I'd love to shadow you for a day or two. That's going to get you to know a lot of people, and it's also going to help you kind of figure out if law is the right thing for you and what type of law you want to do. Okay. So Dominic had a question. Knowing that you've gone through the JD program application, how did you prepare for the LSAT when you applied to law school? If you would be applying this year, how differently would you be preparing for the LSAT? It's a good question. I went to law school a long time ago, so I haven't thought about this in a while. I didn't take a class when I was preparing for the LSAT. I went to law school straight out of college, and I frankly just didn't have the money for a class. So I bought a book and I took a lot of practice tests. That's how I prepared. I didn't decide I wanted to go to law school until my senior year of college. I think if I had to do it now, I would have not rushed into law school and would have taken more time to prepare for the LSAT and would have maybe saved money and taken a class. Yeah, so that's my answer. But there's really no one right way to prepare for the LSAT. We have had people take every different type of class. We have tons of people that self-study. It really is about what works with your schedule and your personality and your finances.
Thank you, Ms. Branson. So one question I had is, does one major, like if you're majoring something in college, is one better than the other, or just?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, we like every different type of major, and we have pretty much every major you can think of represented in the law school. So there's a misconception that political science or government or history are the best majors for law school. They're great majors for law school because they're going to give you an introduction to the law. They're going to help you learn how to read and write. But we also have a bunch of math and science and engineering majors. And guess what? Those majors are really good at problem solving, are really good at breaking down a bunch of material into manageable chunks. We have a bunch of theater majors, and guess what? They're really good at standing up in front of people and performing. We have plenty of business majors and marketing majors, and they're really good at kind of seeing big picture. So there is something that every type of major can bring to law school. So my advice, as you're planning for what major you want to do, is pick what interests you. Because if you pick something that interests you, you're going to do better in it. And what matters way, way more is the GPA than what it is you study. That being said, we know that engineering and math and science GPAs tend to be a little bit lower. So don't worry too much about that. Okay. Oh, that's a great question. Joaquin has a question about community colleges. So about, I'd say 80% of our applicants have community college on their transcripts. That is just really, really common. I don't bat an eye at that. I don't think anybody does. One thing I would mention, though, that I think sometimes throws people off is, say that you go to a community college for 2 years and then a 4-year university for your last 2 years. I think people think that the GPA that we see is just going to be from that last institution. So you will send all of your transcripts into LSAC, the Law School Admissions Council, and they will merge all of your grades and will calculate a GPA for us. So we'll see all the transcripts and we will see a merged GPA. So don't think you can slack off at a community college because we'll see all those grades too. But we are very, very used to that. As I said, probably at least 80% these days have gone to a community college.
Thank you, Ms. Branson.
Of course.
Does anybody have further questions?
I'll tell you what, guys, I'm going to put my email in the chat. If y'all ever have any questions, or, if you're ever out in Central Texas and want to come and sit in on a class or meet with some students, we really are here to help y'all over the next 4 or 5 or 6 years, however long it is.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right. Well, thank y'all for, Joaquin has another question about scholarships. These are great questions. So applying for scholarships in law school is different than undergrad. You are eligible for, I'd say, 95% of law school scholarships just by submitting your law school applications. So law schools vary a little bit in how they award scholarships. Some will take your law school application, they'll make an admissions decision and give you that. And then, a month later or so, they'll give you a scholarship decision. A lot of schools are like us in that we make the admissions and scholarship decision at the same time, and give that to you at the same time. Now, most schools will have kind of 1 or 2 specialty scholarships that do require an application. We have one that is, it's called a Jaworski scholarship. It's for people that did undergraduate advocacy activities, so mock trial, moot court, debate, things like that at the undergrad level. That one requires an application. If you go to Texas A&M or Abilene Christian University, we have special scholarships through those schools, but 98% of our scholarships, you just apply with the regular application. And that's true for most law schools.
I have another question.
Okay.
So talking about scholarships, around how many people a year get the full ride?
So this last year, it was about 40%. So it really is it varies year to year. Some years it's, 25, 30%. Some years it's closer to 40, 45. So that would be a great question to ask of admissions offices kind of a year or 2 before you apply. Okay.
Does anybody have any last questions?
I have one last question.
Great.
How has COVID-19 impacted the classes, like online and all that stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. So at Baylor Law, we're on a quarter system, so we have class year round. You don't have to go year round, but we have classes year round. So last spring, like everywhere else, we went to virtual classes and stayed virtual classes spring and summer. Starting in the fall, many of our upper level classes were taught hybrid. If your last name was A through L, you'd be in the classroom on campus Monday, Wednesday, Friday 1 week, Tuesday, Thursday the next week. And then M through Z was vice versa. And all classes were taught were taught simultaneously live and live streamed. For our first year classes, we were able to find classrooms that were large enough to accommodate all of our first year students socially distanced. So our first year classes have been in person this year, except when people needed to quarantine. Then they could quarantine and watch classes live streamed. In the fall, we will be back to fully in person. Our faculty are pretty firm about not transitioning to any sort of online model. We really believe there's something to be gained from being in a classroom and interacting with your professors and your peers. So we're going back to fully in person.
Thank you, Ms. Branson.
Yes, thank you guys. These are great questions. And as I said, if you think of something later on, please do not hesitate to contact me. We're here to help you guys as you continue down the road to law school.
So this concludes our meet and greet with Ms. Jenny Branson, Assistant Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid at Baylor Law. Thank you, Ms. Branson, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to share your experiences and tips with our members. Lastly, but not least, with your permission, Ms. Branson, And guests, we would like to take a group picture as a screenshot of our screen. Okay. Thank you once again, everyone, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.